Hello and welcome back to the PSD to HTML responsive portfolio build. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at the Photoshop files that we're going to be building from, and you can find these in the project files folder that you can download with this course. And we have two different Photoshop files called Portfolio Large and Portfolio Small. And I want to take a look at both of these. It's important to understand how your files are constructed. Take a look at the layers in your Photoshop files to see what it's going to take to cut these files up in order to get all of the images that we need. So let's start by taking a look at the large version. I'm going to double click on that to open it up in Photoshop. And again, this is the large version. This is what the site is going to look like in a desktop browser that's expanded all the way. So I'm going to turn off my guides by hitting Command H or Control H if you're using a Mac, and then Command 1 or Control 1 to zoom into 100%. And I also want to get rid of all this exterior paraphernalia so that we can see a little bit better. So I'm going to hit the F key twice so that we just see the site itself. And I'm also going to turn off the rulers by hitting Command R. And there we go, we have a nice clean screen. So this is what our site is going to look like in a full-size browser. We have a nav bar that's touching the top of the browser, and it's extending all the way to the edges, to the left and right edges. Then we have our header. We have a featured icons section. So when you hear me referring to the featured section, that's what this is. And this has 3 sections in it, and then expanding off to the left and right edges of the browser are this dark gray background color. We also have a little paragraph section here. We have 4 portfolio pieces, and remember this is going to be a responsive design, so we're going to do a lot to these portfolio pieces to make them change shape and size as we change the size of the browser. Then at the bottom we have another 3-column section for our footer, and then a little copyright section down here at the bottom. So before you get started fleshing out your HTML and CSS, it's important to understand what you're building and to take a look at your site and try to figure out how you're going to structure things. So this again is what the full-size site is going to look like. Now I'm going to hit F again to go back to the original Photoshop view, and I'm also going to open up the small version. If we open that up and then again hit Command 1 to zoom into 100%, this is what our site's going to look like in a mobile browser. So when we have a smaller, narrower browser, it's going to look a little bit different. Remember, at the top of our large design, we could actually see, let me switch to the move tool here. We could actually see our menu items here and our social icons at the top. But if we go to our small version, you'll see our menu is gone, and we now just see this icon in the upper left-hand corner. And that's probably a familiar icon to you. That's the icon you can use to click on to see your menu items. And so when we click on that, our menu is going to expand down, and you'll notice that our feature section is a little different as well. Instead of having 3 columns here, we now have these 3 sections stacked on top of each other. And the background is set up a little differently here. In the large version, you can see our background is really just one image. But in our smaller version, we're using the same image for all 3 of these sections, but they're just positioned a little bit differently. So we're seeing different parts of the image, but we're using the exact same image that we see in the large version. So then as we scroll down, we see things are arranged a little bit differently. We have our paragraph here, which is the same, but our portfolio section is no longer in columns. Instead, they're all just stacked on top of each other. And in the large version, we saw that they were square shapes here, but now they've kind of extended out to stretch to the entire width of the browser, so they're now more rectangular. And there we go. So then from the blog section, contact us, register for updates, all of those, the footer sections are no longer in columns either. They're now stacked on top of each other. So that's basically how it works. It's important to also take a look at your layers just to understand how your layers are organized. You'll see we have these nicely organized in folders, which is very important when you're creating the Photoshop file because it really helps us to drill in and see what our layers are, and it'll be easier to find our layers this way. So again, that's what our site looks like, and as we move forward, we're going to start building this in HTML, and once we get that done, we're going to jump into CSS and start making it look nice. So thank you for watching, and we'll get started in the next video.